The twin suns of Kepler 442b cast their golden light across the crystalline spires of New Zephyr City. The morning air shimmered with the gentle hum of anti-gravity transports carrying Zephyrian citizens to their daily work. These beings, with their translucent blue skin and delicate features, had built a paradise among the stars. Their elongated limbs moved with natural grace as they tended to the bioluminescent gardens that spiraled up the sides of their organic architecture. Dr. Kira Vell then stood on the observation deck of the Planetary Communications Center, her large violet eyes scanning the peaceful horizon. As the head of interstellar communications for the colony, she monitored the constant stream of data flowing between New Zephyr and the hundreds of other worlds in the Galactic Federation. The Zephyrians had been part of this peaceful alliance for over 2 centuries, contributing their expertise in biotechnology and stellar mapping. The colony on Kepler 442b represented everything the Zephyrians valued. They had transformed the initially barren world into a thriving ecosystem where technology and nature existed in perfect harmony. Massive coral-like structures housed millions of citizens, while floating gardens provided both beauty and sustenance. The planet's 3 moons had been converted into research stations, studying everything from quantum mechanics to xenobiology. Kira's assistant, Jean Noll, approached with his usual gentle manner. His people had never known war, never experienced the kind of violence that plagued some of the younger species in the galaxy. Dr. Velvin were receiving some unusual readings from the outer sensor array. He reported, his melodic voice carrying a note of concern. "What kind of readings?" Kira asked, turning from the window to face the main communication console. The holographic display showed the normal traffic patterns around their system: merchant vessels, research ships, and the occasional tourist transport. Unknown signatures, approaching from the void between systems. Jean Noll replied, his delicate fingers dancing across the control interface. "They're not using any recognized propulsion signatures or communication protocols." Kira felt a strange chill despite the warm air circulating through the center. The void between star systems was largely empty space, used only by the most advanced civilizations for hiding research stations or by criminals avoiding detection. "How many vessels are we detecting?" "The computer is having difficulty getting an accurate count," Jean said, his voice growing more worried. "The ships seem to be using some kind of stealth technology, but their mass signatures suggest hundreds of vessels." Before Kira could respond, every alarm in the communication center began blaring simultaneously. The peaceful hum of the city outside was shattered by the piercing wail of the planetary defense system, a system that hadn't been activated in over 50 years. "Emergency transmission from Orbital Defense Platform 7, another technician called out, his voice tight with panic. "They're reporting massive energy signatures dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of our system." Kira rushed to the main tactical display as it flickered to life, showing the 3-dimensional layout of their solar system. What she saw made her blood freeze in her veins. Hundreds of dark, angular ships were materializing throughout their system, their black holes seeming to absorb light rather than reflect it. These vessels bore no resemblance to any known galactic civilization. They were predatory in design, covered in weapon emplacements and sensor arrays. "By the ancient stars," whispered Jean Noll. "What are those things?" The answer came in the form of devastating energy beams that lanced out from the mysterious fleet. The first target was Orbital Defense Platform 7, a massive structure that had protected their world for generations. The platform's shields flared brilliant white for a few seconds before collapsing entirely. Secondary explosions ripped through the station as its reactor core went critical, sending debris raining down through the planet's atmosphere like burning stars. "They're targeting our defense platform systematically," reported the tactical officer, her voice shaking. "Platform 3 is gone. Platform 5 is not responding. Platform 1 is requesting immediate evacuation. Kira felt her world crumbling around her as she watched the systematic destruction of everything her people had built. These attackers, whoever they were, showed no interest in communication or negotiation. They simply destroyed everything in their path with terrifying efficiency. "Get me a direct line to the Galactic Federation Council," she ordered, her training taking over despite her terror. "Emergency frequency, maximum priority." As the communication system established the connection, Kira could see more of the enemy ships descending through their atmosphere. These vessels were smaller than the capital ships in orbit, but no less menacing. They moved with predatory grace, their hulls crackling with energy weapons as they approached the major population centers. The first bombs fell on the northern continent, turning entire cities into pillars of flame that could be seen from space. The Zephyrians had no military to speak of. They had never needed one. Their entire philosophy was based on peaceful coexistence and mutual cooperation. They had no weapons capable of challenging these invaders, no tactics for fighting such overwhelming force. "Federation Council responding," Jean-Nol reported, his voice barely steady. "Patching through now." The holographic image of Counselor Varseth appeared above the main console. The elderly Altarian's 4 arms were spread in a gesture of concern. But Kira could see the helplessness in his compound eyes. "Dr. Velvin, we're receiving reports of an attack on your system. What is your current status?" "We're under assault by unknown forces," Kira replied, ducking as another explosion shook the communication center. "Hundreds of ships, advanced technology, systematic destruction of our infrastructure. We need immediate military assistance." Counselor Varseth was quiet for a moment, consulting with other council members whose images appeared in smaller displays around him. "Dr. Velvin, I'm afraid the nearest Federation fleet is 6 days away from your position. The Gentorian Third Fleet could potentially reach you in 4 days if they abandon their current mission." 4 days? Kira felt her heart sink. Outside the windows, she could see enemy fighters strafing the lower levels of the city. Civilians were fleeing in panic, their graceful forms stumbling as they tried to reach the emergency shelters that had never been designed for warfare. "Counselor, we don't have 4 hours. These attackers are destroying everything. Our people are dying." Another massive explosion rocked the planet as one of the orbital processing stations was vaporized. The economic heart of their civilization was being systematically torn apart, and with each destroyed facility, more Zephyrian lives were lost. "I understand your situation," Varseth replied, his voice filled with regret. "But Federation policy requires a formal vote before deploying military assets to defend member worlds. The earliest we can convene a full session is tomorrow morning, Galactic Standard Time." Kira stared at the counselor in disbelief. "You're going to debate while my people are being slaughtered?" "Dr. Velvin, please understand that we must follow proper procedures. There are political considerations, territorial issues, and the transmission cut off as another energy beam struck the communication center directly. Emergency power kicked in, bathing everything in red light as Kira and her staff struggled to maintain their equipment. Through the smoke and sparks, she could hear Jean-Nol trying to re-establish contact with anyone who might help. "I'm getting responses from 17 different Federation worlds," he reported, coughing from the acrid smoke. "They're all expressing sympathy and promising to consider our request for aid." Considering? Kira felt rage building inside her chest, an emotion her peaceful people rarely experienced. They're considering whether to help stop a genocide? She moved to the emergency broadcast system, the one designed to send distress signals across the entire galaxy. If the Federation wouldn't act, perhaps someone else would listen. Her fingers trembled as she activated the wideband transmission. A ray sending their plea into the void of space. This is Dr. Kira Velden of the Zephyrian colony on Kepler 442b. She spoke into the recorder, her voice carrying across the stars at faster-than-light speed. We are under attack by unknown forces. Our cities are burning. Our people are dying. We have no military, no weapons, no way to defend ourselves. If anyone can hear this transmission, if anyone in the galaxy still believes that innocent lives matter, please help us. We have children hiding in the crystal caves while our world dies around them. The transmission was sent to every monitoring station, every communication relay, every civilization that maintained listening posts in the galactic network. Most would ignore it. Distance made compassion easier to avoid. Others would debate and discuss until it was too late. But somewhere in the vast cosmos, the message would reach those who understood that some things were worth fighting for, even when the odds seemed impossible. As Kira finished the recording, she looked out at her dying world and wondered if anyone would answer their call. The attack had been going on for less than 2 hours, but already half their major cities were in ruins. The beautiful spires of New Zephyr were cracking under the assault, their bioluminescent gardens withering as the structures that sustained them were destroyed. Unknown to the desperate Zephyrians, their message was already racing across the galaxy, carried by quantum communication networks to thousands of worlds. Most would hear it and find reasons to look away. But on a small blue world orbiting a yellow star, beings who called themselves human were about to prove that sometimes the most dangerous response to a cry for help is the simple word, yes. Asterisk, the message from Kepler 442b reached Earth's deep space monitoring station Sigma 7 at 0347 hours, Greenwich Mean Time. Lieutenant Marcus Webb had been on the night shift for 6 months, and most of his job involved cataloging routine communications between Federation worlds. The young officer was fighting to stay awake when the priority alert began flashing on his primary console. "What the hell?" Marcus muttered, straightening in his chair as he pulled up the incoming transmission. The Federation rarely used emergency frequencies, and when they did, it usually meant some kind of diplomatic crisis rather than actual violence. The galaxy had been relatively peaceful for the past 50 years. As he listened to Dr. Veldan's desperate plea, Marcus felt his blood grow cold. The fear in the alien woman's voice was unmistakable, transcending species barriers. He had heard that same terror during his deployment in the Congo crisis 3 years earlier. The sound of innocent people facing death with no way to defend themselves. "Jesus Christ," he whispered, immediately forwarding the transmission to his commanding officer. Within minutes, Colonel Janet Hayes was striding into the monitoring station, her uniform hastily thrown on over civilian clothes. "Talk to me, Webb," she ordered, settling into the supervisor's chair beside him. "Emergency distress call from a Zephyrian colony, ma'am. They're under attack by unknown forces, requesting immediate military assistance." Marcus played back the recording, watching his colonel's expression grow progressively more grim. Colonel Hayes had spent 20 years in the military before being assigned to monitor galactic communications. She had seen enough war to recognize genuine desperation when she heard it. "What's the Federation's response?" "Multiple member worlds have acknowledged the transmission," Marcus replied, pulling up the diplomatic channels. "Standard responses, expressing concern, promising to consider the situation, calling for emergency council sessions. No one's actually deploying ships to help." Hayes felt a familiar anger building in her chest. She had seen this pattern before. During Earth's various humanitarian crises, lots of talk, lots of sympathy, but when it came time for action, everyone found reasons to look away. "Distance from Earth?" "Approximately 47 light years, ma'am. With our latest hyperspace drives, we could reach them in." Marcus paused to check his calculations. "Approximately 18 hours." The colonel stood up and began pacing. a habit she had developed during her ground combat days. 18 hours was fast for interstellar travel, but it might already be too late. From the sound of that transmission, the attackers weren't interested in negotiation or conquest. They were systematically destroying everything. "Ma'am," Marcus said quietly, "should I forward this to Earth Command?" Hayes stopped pacing and looked at the young lieutenant. She could see the same anger in his eyes that she felt in her own chest. Earth had only been part of the Galactic community for 15 years, ever since making first contact with a Federation survey ship. In that time, humanity had been treated as junior partners at best, tolerated, but not particularly respected by the older civilizations. "Get me Admiral Chun," she ordered. Priority 1 communication. Admiral Sarah Chun was in her office at Terra Command when the call came through. At 55 years old, she was one of the youngest flag officers in human history, having risen through the ranks during Earth's rapid expansion into space. She had overseen the construction of humanity's first interstellar fleet and had been dealing with the politics of galactic membership since first contact. "Colonel Hayes," Chun said, as her image appeared on the communication screen. "What's so urgent that it couldn't wait until morning?" Hayes quickly briefed the Admiral on the situation, playing the distress call and showing the Federation's lackluster response. As she spoke, she watched Chun's expression change from tired annoyance to focused intensity. 47 light years. Chun mused, leaning back in her chair. That puts them well outside Federation core territory. No wonder everyone's dragging their feet. It's easier to help when it doesn't require risk. "Ma'am, with respect, those people are dying while the galaxy debates," Hayes said. "We have ships that could reach them. We have the capability to help." Admiral Chun was quiet for a long moment, staring at the tactical display that showed Earth's fleet positions. The Third Fleet was currently on maneuvers near Jupiter, while the Fifth Fleet was conducting training exercises in the Centauri system. Either force could reach Kepler-4, 42b faster than any Federation vessel. "Colonel, are you recommending that Earth unilaterally intervene in what might be an internal Federation matter?" "I'm recommending that we do what's right," Hayes replied firmly. "We became part of this galactic community because we believed in the principles it claimed to represent. Peace, cooperation, mutual aid. But when push comes to shove, it looks like we're the only ones willing to actually live by those principles." Chun stood up and walked to the large window overlooking Terra Command's main spaceport. In the pre-dawn darkness, she could see the running lights of dozens of human warships, vessels, that had been built with lessons learned from centuries of conflict on Earth. Unlike the elegant, artistic ships favored by most Federation members, human vessels were built for war. They were ugly, functional, and deadly effective. "Admiral," Hayes continued, "I've been monitoring galactic communications for 3 years now. I've seen dozens of situations where member worlds requested help and got nothing but bureaucratic delays. The Federation is great at talking about peace and cooperation, but when someone actually needs help, they always find reasons to avoid risk. And you think humanity should be different?" "I think humanity is different," Hayes said without hesitation. "We come from a world that taught us to fight for what we believe in. We've spent our entire history protecting the weak from the strong. Why should that change just because we're in space now?" Admiral Chun turned back to the communication screen, seeing her own conviction reflected in the colonel's eyes. She thought about her own children, sleeping safely in their beds, while alien children hid in caves on a dying world. She thought about the oath she had taken when accepting her commission, to protect the innocent and defend the defenseless. "Colonel Hayes, transmit that distress call to all fleet commanders immediately. Priority Alpha authorization. Tell them to prepare for emergency deployment." "Yes, ma'am," Hayes responded, barely containing her excitement. And Colonel? Make sure they understand. This isn't a Federation operation. This is humanity keeping its word. Within 30 minutes, alarms were sounding at military bases across the solar system. The Third Fleet, under the command of Admiral Rodriguez, began emergency departure procedures from Jupiter orbit. The Fifth Fleet, led by Admiral Thompson, abandoned their training exercises and set course for the rendezvous point near Earth. Captain Diana Walsh commanded the heavy cruiser Defiant, one of the newest ships in the human fleet. She had been asleep in her quarters when the alert came through, but 15 minutes later, she was on the bridge in full uniform, reviewing the tactical situation. "Status report," she ordered as her senior officers took their positions. "All systems green, Captain," reported Commander Jackson, her executive officer. "Engines are warming up for hyperspace jump. Weapon systems are armed and ready. Marine contingent is standing by for planetary operations." Walsh studied the limited intelligence they had on the situation. The attackers were using unknown technology and showed no interest in communication. Their tactics suggested they were raiders or slavers rather than a legitimate military force. But their numbers and capabilities were formidable. "XO, what do we know about these Zephyrians?" she asked. "Peaceful species, Captain. No military to speak of. They're essentially scientists and artists who happen to build a successful colony. From what I can tell, they've never fought a war in their entire recorded history." Walsh felt her jaw tighten. She had grown up in Detroit during the gang wars of the 2160s, and she knew what happened when predators targeted the defenseless. And the Federation's response? "Lots of concerned statements, ma'am. No ships moving to assist." "Typical," Walsh muttered. She had served as a military observer during several Federation conflicts, and she had been consistently unimpressed by their willingness to actually fight for their stated principles. "What's our ETA to the target system?" 17 hours, 43 minutes at maximum hyperspace velocity, Jackson replied. Walsh nodded grimly. By the time they arrived, the attack would have been going on for almost a full day. In her experience, that was usually enough time for raiders to accomplish their objectives and disappear. But if there were survivors, if there was anyone left to save, humanity would be there. "All hands, this is the captain," she announced over the ship's communication system. "We're responding to a distress call from a peaceful colony under attack. The rest of the galaxy is apparently too busy to help, so it's up to us to show them what humanity stands for. We're going to jump into a combat situation against unknown enemies with superior numbers. Some of you might be wondering why we're risking our lives for aliens we've never met." She paused, looking out at the stars visible through the bridge. "Viewport. I'll tell you why. Because when someone calls for help, you answer. Because the strong protect the weak. Because that's who we are. That's who we've always been. And if the galaxy wants to learn what humans do when good people are in trouble, they're about to get a demonstration." As the human fleet prepared to jump to hyperspace, their destination was a dying world where desperate people waited for salvation that might never come. But humanity had made its decision. They were coming, and they were bringing everything. They had. The galaxy was about to learn that when Earth said yes to a call for help, they meant it with every weapon they possessed.